So are we recording now? Oh, I call the planning commission regular meeting Wednesday, March 19th, 2025 in the City Hall Community Room at 6 p.m. To order. And we have roll call.
Detmer. Here. Freed.
Here.
Kronberg. McSweeney.
Here.
Meridian.
Here.
Moss.
Here.
Newman.
Here.
Robson.
Present.
Wilma.
Here.
All right, moving on to approval of minutes for the February 19th meeting. Comments, corrections, take a motion to approve.
I move the minutes be approved. I second.
Okay, Rick Newman makes the approves the minutes. And Bob approves them. I mean, seconds them. And all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Okay. Minutes have been approved. Moving on to the first item. In new business, a special number 3A, special condition use for a childcare center at 403 Madison Street. John?
Yeah, Madam Chair, members of the commission, we received an application from Manti Capital, who is requesting a special conditional use to put a childcare center at the former Word of Life Community Church at 402 Madison Street, which is at the corner of Madison and Ingalls. There's really the request this evening. The decision point for the planning commission is to schedule a public hearing for the April planning commission meeting. The applicant is here at the April meeting. If you so decide to schedule a public hearing, there would be the review of the special use conditions plus a site plan for review. They have submitted some conceptual floor plans and drawings. If you have any questions for the applicant, but this is the first step in the process, which is the scheduling of the public hearing. So with that, Madam Chair, I'll turn it back over.
Okay. Did you want to say anything or?
Yeah, I can talk for a minute. My name is Abe Monti, with the Monti businesses in Petoskey. Megan Gardner's here. She's our operator. If you guys have questions relating to, is a childcare needed in this area, another center? Is there a demand, that kind of thing? She's the one to talk to about that. I can talk about the building and any questions you have about the construction work that we would actually be doing. And I'll just give a really short introduction to say our family has been in business in the area, as you guys know, for about 100 years. We've recently, in the last 3 or 4, my generation bought out our parents' generation at the end of 2020. And the family's done a lot of charitable work overseas for a long time. And my generation really has kind of adopted a heart of trying to do things in the community here. So we're doing the Pine Pond project, the housing project up on Picker Lake Road. We've developed a lot of internal things with our staff. We've hired a therapist to work with staff and people to connect staff with needs that they have in the communities. We're doing a lot with the recovery community. We have a home in Charlevoix where we have people that have recently come out of recovery that work for us. We live in that. We have about 40 people that have come out of recovery in the last 12 months employed. We see another big need in the area being childcare. This is not, I mean, we probably have, I don't know, half a dozen employees plus or minus at any given time that are kind of in a crisis situation with childcare. We cannot run a childcare center with a half a dozen people in it. That's not effective. So we're seeing if there's a demand, or we're seeing if there's a desire of the community to do a larger center. So this would be a 48 child center. It would run from 6 months till once you hit the first school year after you turn 4, then you can start attending free state funded preschool that would be run by Petoskey. Doesn't have that program in full this current school year. They're going to start it next year, but the school systems will have free. So we aren't interested in competing with the public school system. We can't do that. We could never afford to do that. So this would be 6 months till sometime during the 4th year of the child's life. So we'd have a couple classrooms that would be for like pre-potty training, and then one large, but that would be 24 children total between the 2 classrooms, and then one larger classroom for potty trained basically age. And again, Megan can get into those details. The idea in general would be, we especially post-COVID, the children are being educated by SpongeBob, and we're trying to, this would be a values focused and academic focused program, not a babysitting program. It'd be predominantly an educational program. As far as funding for it, we're still kind of in debate on a couple of different options. We have the option of going down a 501c3 route and trying to run, childcare doesn't make any money, okay? We're not doing this as a for-profit. I'm telling you right now, this is something the family's putting money into, not taking money out of. But if we go to 501c3 route, we'd be bridging the gaps with donations from the family as well as the community. That's an option. The other option is to run as an employer-owned daycare. We'd be contracting with other employers. That's going to limit us in the income. They'd be mostly for lower income people if we go that route. But there's some really good grants that would cover about 55 to 60% of the operating costs could be run through state and federal grants and tax credits. That's a positive. The negative is, and I'm not saying the lower income people absolutely need childcare. I think they would limit the people that we could market to. So I don't know. We're still trying to work through that detail. But in the short term, what we need to figure out is the city going to allow us to put a childcare on that property? So that's all I got.
Okay.
If there's any questions, you can ask me. Again, if you have, is there demand questions?
Right.
Talk to her. Do you want to start with her?
No, I think we all understand there's a need for childcare in
Okay.
Petoskey, so I think we can.
And if you also want to ask about like the specifics of kind of how she would be running the day-to-day operation.
Our
kind of-
main concern is the building,
Yeah.
where the playground is and,
Yes. Okay.
concrete stuff. All right, thank you.
Okay.
Yes.
Just a couple questions. I know one of the issues is parking.
Yes.
First of all, let me say, I 100% agree with the daycare. I know that, I'm on a couple committees at the hospital and they have people call off because they don't have daycare. The merits of this are 100% I'm in favor of. It looks like you might be short on parking. and it's
Yes,
just-
I can address that.
Okay, what I don't understand is in the the south side of Madison, in front of the church, whatever you wanna call that. My directions are upside down. There's some line parking there
Yes.
already across from Scooby's.
It's a good question.
Does that belong to you, the city?
No, it's a good question. This is a spot where we take logic and take it out the window. And then we start talking about rules and regulations, right? I don't know, Lisa and I have had several conversations about this. So logically, someone at some point in the past made a parking lot there, which probably was paid for by this church at some point, I'm guessing. I don't know that for sure, but it's not on the church's property.
It was city.
It's the city paid for it. It's on the city's property, the city paid for it. I talked to Randy Flynn this morning from Cortez Flynn, Kitty Corner. He said in all the years he's been there, the only people that ever park in that are when he has all employee meetings. So it's not used, it only was used it was used on Sundays for the church when the church was running there. But it's not something we would have access to because it's your lot. That all being said, we cannot fit enough parking spaces on our property to operate the daycare. So the solution that Lisa came up with, which I appreciate, is I've requested that Randy would give us like if everything else is full, can we park a couple cars in your lot? And he said he believes he's agreeable. He's gonna ask around with his staff. Now, in reality, we all know that city lot is gonna get used but you guys can only count 4 spaces that aren't on our property. Even though there's the entirety of Ingalls Avenue, the entirety of Madison Street, and 10 parking spaces in front of there. Again, this is where logic goes to parks over there, and we have to talk about how to fit inside the box that you guys have. That is not something you created, it's just something you have to work inside. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
I know that probably isn't a very professional answer.
No, I
but
think it's a great answer.
It is what it is.
I think there should be ways around it somehow.
So I think the expectation is that you would have an agreement with Court Haven.
Yes,
It would be like, we're gonna use 2 or 3 parking spaces when the street is filled. It's the remaining, how many are remaining? It's 16 plus 4, so it would be 3 parking
yes, 3
spaces.
parking spaces. The agreement would say when we, if we need additional spaces, again, the staff would be 11. So again, looking logically, 11 staff members, you've got 2 or 3 parents dropping off at a time. Likely that lot that we have in the back is gonna function, but again, you gotta work inside you don't write all these rules, you gotta just work inside of them. So yes, we would have 16. Between the
So you'll
south,
have 4 and
it's either 3 or 4 on their property. That we would have as kind of backup, 3 on their property as a
Okay.
backup.
so that's what we'll need.
Yes, and by the next meeting, I'll have that letter. Between now and that meeting, I gotta talk to you, I meant to email you today and just, I'm gonna need some bullet points of like. What exactly his letter needs to say that he can circulate around in his group, but Yeah.
Okay, I think the other one is the playground,
yes,
so. That will
Megan,
be,
we're gonna need you. for
that
this.
will be, oh, I don't,
Okay,
will that be fenced in? Because that's technically the front yard, isn't it?
you come on up here,
Give you
introduce yourself.
So just, yeah, introduce
Okay.
yourself.
I'm Megan Gardner, the potential operator for the daycare. And licensing requires that there is some type of barrier. We are planning to do a 4-foot fence
Okay,
to, and then we have the option to, put like hedges in front of it if you didn't want that. The chain, but it would be a 4-foot like metal chain link fence is what
Right.
our plan was.
so Lisa, since that's, or John, since that's front yard. Isn't there kind of a
There's an
drop off?
elevation change.
Elevated.
So is it for?
So long as they stay in line with the front of the building,
Mhm.
that's technically allowed. It can't come in front of the building. It's a street.
Okay,
Which we wouldn't, that entire space, sorry,
Right.
that entire space between the building, hill, basically, is about 2,000 square feet. And we would need like 1,200 square feet for the playground, so we should have plenty of space to keep the fence and some shrubs if we need to. Behind the kind of face of the building. Does that make sense?
go ahead, John.
Yeah, I'll probably just disclose this so we don't go down the road too far. If it's a chain link fence, I'm going to recommend that it not be a chain link fence because it's in the front yard of a residential neighborhood. So if there's gotta be a fence, I know it's under state licensing,
Yeah.
that if we have to put a fence, which I think is appropriate, it at least has to be a vinyl fence that would fit in with the character of the building and not be impactful in the neighborhood. Because I wouldn't want the neighborhood, because there's no fences in the street, along the streetscape. For neighbors to have a chain link fence in the front yard.
Is that okay, Megan, to put a vinyl fence up? Or do you know, does the state have requirement?
The requirement is just that there's a barrier.
There's a barrier.
And it has to be at least 4 feet tall
Correct.
for the barrier.
Yeah, vinyl's fine, I think, as long as it's like.
Well, it doesn't have to be vinyl, it could be wood.
Or it could be wood, but you know what I'm,
Right, or it could be,
Yeah.
you know, iron.
Married to chain link, we just would like something that is, we'd like something that is
Containing the kids
Contained.
on
oh,
the
yeah.
playground.
contained to kids on the playground. And I think having something that's not super visible through it, we talked about that too, just because from the gas station and stuff, I don't know if we want people looking at the kids
No.
playing, you know? So, and because there's an elevation change, it's maybe this high, and another 4 feet, they won't be able to see into the playground from the gas station or the bottle shop, right? It's not, yeah, I think doing something that's like
I
not seen
wanted
through
to-
is gonna be
I
better.
wanted to make that comment. I didn't want you to put your site plan together and then,
Sure, that's not a problem.
so, yeah.
Maybe it would be good to run by Lisa, the zoning administrator. What fences you're considering,
Yeah, we can do that.
because visually it's gonna matter.
Yeah, we don't need a bunch of 3-year-olds running around the neighborhood, so.
You don't want something that you climb, right? Yeah,
And being the businesses that are across the street too, we don't necessarily want people wandering onto the playground either, so.
Exactly.
But I have a comment for the planning commission, more of an educational comment. This is a great example where parking gets in the way of a use. Because as childcare in this community is a big demand with employers. And to have to balance childcare because we have the 3-car parking, this is something that I want you to think about when we're redoing the code. Is that sometimes cars are favored more than people and uses, and this is a classic example where we get in our own way sometimes, so.
I
Okay.
think we can get around it with, if, as long as Cortez Flynn is willing to be,
Mhm.
you know. Again, we're not gonna be parking in their lot, we're not gonna actually need it, but you guys have to work inside your box that you have, I get that too, and Randy gets it as well.
And I think it's important to highlight too, that it would only be at pickup and drop off time that we'd really have that and, also early morning and then. I would say probably like a 3:30 timeframe and then a 5 o'clock timeframe. So it's not like we're gonna have people in and out of the building all day long. It's just those specific timeframes. So I think that's important to highlight as well.
Right. Okay, are there any other discussion? Bob?
Thank you. Great presentation, great plan. Thumbs up for the need. The age group that would be here, 6 months through,
3 to 4 years old, depending on the parents. Their idea being that we're teaching the values and the academics, I would anticipate some 4-year-old parents wanting to pay for that private schooling versus going to like a GSRP or Head Start program. So I would say that our license will most likely be for birth to age 5. To give us that, I would say it would be 5 years, 11 months. That way, if they turn 5 in the 4-year-old program. And then it would be 24 students in that preschool potty trained age and then 24 in the infant to toddler range.
all right, I work in the hospital. Childcare, the CDC Child Development Center is incredible value to the hospital. I would recommend in your plan, consider an entry and exit from your lot, so it's drive in, drive out. That will make the logistics of drop off go much better rather than pulling in, backing out, that's gonna be a cluster.
To John's point, that we originally had a loop designed, thinking, oh, we can park everybody on the street, it'll be no problem. It's the design, we will make it as efficient as we can make it.
Yeah.
But again, we gotta work inside the parking parameters, it's just what we gotta do.
Just a suggestion.
Yeah.
Just a suggestion.
I'm not opposed, I would just say, to some cones on the ground and a nice little drop off loop once we get this thing approved, but you guys have to work inside of the parameters that you have.
So the other comment is when the planning commission reviewed the urgent care for
Oh, right.
the intersection of 131 and 31. That's next to a school. They put up vinyl fence. Took a while. but
Yeah.
Vinyl fence was put up there and I think it's the same rationale and in both ways. For the kids' safety looking and for the people in the business, overlooking the school. So I think that just as an example of something that was approved in the past. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Charlie?
I move that we schedule a public hearing in April.
Second.
Charlie makes the motion, Albert seconds it. All in favor? The record show everyone voted aye. All right, thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay.
No.
Well, see you guys next month.
Yeah.
We're missing, wait just a moment, we're missing 2 or 3 small pieces in our package that we don't have done for the engineering side and stuff like that, so we'll get that to John, at least.
Yep, you'll get to me.
now in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And
Well,
if
there
there's
is a,
anything else that you guys need,
Yeah.
we got a month to put it together, we really like our offer on the building, like our due diligence expires like the day after the next meeting. Like, we're gonna need to make a decision like in meeting for a couple of days after pretty quickly, so if there's anything you think of that you're gonna do for us, let us know if you can, because we would hope to get.
Let me give you a card.
Moved in, you kind of know whether.
I can send you
it's happening or not.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying.
Lisa's gonna be on vacation and then Kate, if you can't get a hold of her, she's gonna give you my contact information. You can get me.
right, and Lisa, when does he have to have things in for the April 16th? What's the deadline?
It is. April,
10 days before, right?
no, the public hearing, no, that's
With the public hearing,
the
that's.
public hearing, no, we just have to have it before the packet goes out. There's no deadline for that.
Okay, very good.
We just need to get the engineering done and so that's other, and then.
Okay.
all this stuff.
Right, the packet goes out the Thursday or Friday before.
We should have that.
Yep.
Below Friday.
All right, very good.
How many emails?
Okay, moving on.
Cynthia, one.
Yeah.
John, is there a issue that needs to be dealt with regard to Scoobies? And
With what?
with Scoobies and their permit for medical marijuana?
Well, that
It's
expires.
expired? Thank you.
Okay. All right, moving on to number 3, new business. B, consider ordinance amendment allowing below grade residential uses in the B2 Central Business District.
Yeah, this is a fun one. There's a property owner in the downtown that is conceptualizing redevelopment of their property, and one of the things they asked about was the ability to put an apartment or a co-living space in the lower level, the basement, for housing. So we had a meeting internally, Amy Tweeden, the downtown manager, Lisa Shane, city manager, and myself to talk about it. And part of the conversation was that we already have a number of businesses, retail businesses and restaurants that are already operating out of the lower levels. In conversation with Emmett County Construction regarding code, they don't have an issue with lower level apartments as long as they meet the current building and fire codes. And that includes ventilation, humidity control, ingress, egress, all that good stuff. So we put together a ordinance for your consideration that would allow apartments or residential units in the lower level as a special condition use that has to meet certain, obviously certain conditions. One of the things I'll point out in the draft ordinance is that in reviewing it in the table where this comes out of the current code where we made some additions or deletions. The first one, single family, there was a typo, it was carried over. There is single family is not allowed on the first floor of a, pardon me? The short-term rental, but also a single family. So those were, that was just a typo carried over. But
So you're saying single family is, you're proposing a special condition use for lower level, but first floor, it would, that gets
that
deleted.
gets deleted.
Okay, I wondered about that.
NP,
Pardon me?
should be NP, right, not permitted?
Well, in the current code, it's blank.
Okay.
If it's permitted, you see it.
It's just,
here. It's not permitted, it's blank.
it's blank. The conditions would be, in our conversation, would be access to the residential living unit would be located in a side or rear of the building unless, and in some cases, there are some buildings downtown that have a door adjacent to the front door that would go up or down to the basement.
Mhm.
And if that's the case, that would be allowable. Construction has to comply with the Michigan Building, Electric, Mechanical, Plumbing, and Fire codes. No furniture, equipment, or grills would be allowed outside in the rear unless they're incorporated into a screened patio courtyard, which isn't visible to the general public. And then any refuse collection for the unit, I'm assuming that the business would already have refuse collection, would not be located in a public alley or public space, and it would be the responsibility of the property owner to control that. So those would be the 4 conditions that we thought of that would be which should be considered as part of allowing this. I think the major thing for this to happen would be the compliance with all the various state building codes. Because when I talked to Emmett County Construction, when I talked to Marty about it, he said, you know, we got the building code, electric code, mechanical, plumbing, and then we have the city's fire code. They'd have to address all that. I know Rick and Carolyn deal with codes all the time, so that's kind of the major hurdle, really. And then we wanted to make sure that we didn't have any extraneous furniture showing up in the back of buildings. There are some buildings that have enough rear yard that they could have like a private courtyard, and if that was screened in, who cares? But if it's not screened, then they wouldn't be allowed to do it. So we wanted to present this to the PC, obviously, get your comments if you have revisions. Work through it. If you're comfortable with it, possibility would be late, either tonight or at the next meeting. If you're comfortable scheduling a public hearing so we can get some public comment on it.
Question.
Charlie,
I was confused by this chart at first, but after cross-referencing it with the existing ordinance, this chart presumably is principal uses permitted in the downtown district. Is that correct?
Yeah.
It might, if you're presenting this chart to this format to council, it might be valuable to put that here so that people understand what the heck the chart is. Because it doesn't say on this new
What this
document.
chart is?
It's the principal uses permitted in the downtown district. I kept looking at the chart. I understand the chart, but I didn't know what it applied to.
yeah, I had a question. What districts?
Oh, title of the chart. Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
So just make sure it says B2.
Principal uses
Yeah.
in the downtown district.
Would they be principal uses?
That's what the existing section
Okay,
901 says
I would think housing stuff would be a
in the central business
accessory
district.
use, wouldn't it?
Yeah, there would be, the title of the chart would be principal or permitted and special condition uses allowed in the downtown.
Okay, so that would be different than what's currently in the code.
Yeah, I'll change the title.
Okay, Rick.
Do we have a definition of co-living space? I was trying to picture in my own mind exactly what that is. I didn't go back to the ordinance to whether we had a definition for that, but
Okay, I looked it up. It's 3 or more unrelated persons share common space like a kitchen or great room. And often it's a private bedroom with a private bathroom.
Correct.
okay, thank you.
So we have to have a definition
I'll put a
to
definition.
explain it.
Yep.
Albert,
Mine was the same thing, a definition. I tend to, when I see something, then I try to search for it in the code. And I may have just missed it with the search option.
no.
What is a seasonal rental? Because again, we're not allowing short-term rentals down there, so I also want to make sure that, that's defined, that it's out, that's more than 30 days or whatever, but I couldn't find a location.
That's currently in the code. I guess I'll have to take a look. If we don't have a definition, we'll have to add a definition for seasonal rental.
Yeah, it doesn't define it I could not find a definition. Again, looked it up. It's usually 3 to 6 month leases and it's less than 12 months.
So while short-term rentals are allowed on upper levels in the downtown district, you're specifically prohibiting these basement units from short-term rentals. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah, that's
So
my biggest concern.
also, retail level space, ground level space downtown is sacrosanct. We want to keep it as retail space. So this could only apply to a building that already has retail space at the store level, correct?
Or commercial, it doesn't have to be retail.
Commercial, yes.
Commercial or retail. So this would not be in conflict with that other longstanding requirement that all ground floor must be commercial, not residential.
So correct, and that's, I didn't put the entire table in that's in the current code. I just put the residential and lodging part of it in to prove to show where the changes would be, but yes.
So for instance, in McLean and Aiken, which currently has retail, not only on the Lake Street side, it also has retail on the alley side, which is the lower level. But presumably, they could convert that space into residential
If this
under
was
this new
approved.
legislation,
Yeah.
under this new rule. Okay, thank you.
So seasonal rental. It's gonna have what are the policies gonna be? Are we only 3 to 6 months?
It's currently in the code, so I carried it over,
Okay, because I couldn't find it. To where, Lisa, are you aware of where we look?
I can try and search
Definition?
that.
I couldn't find a definition. Unless they call it something other than seasonal, but seasonal housing. Anything seasonal did not exist in my book.
The definition may be absent.
Yeah.
But seasonal housing, I believe, appears in the table in the B2 district.
Okay,
So it's already there. I didn't make any changes to it.
yeah, okay, but so we,
No, rental is in the current case.
Yeah,
yeah, it's in I don't know, Albert printed it out.
Seasonal house, seasonal rental,
rental.
Seasonal rental, right?
and there is no definition.
Well, we can add a definition of seasonal rental as well.
So this wouldn't be like a short-term rental where we have the police policy part of it and then the zoning. It'll just be in zoning.
Correct.
Okay, so you would develop the 3 to 6 month lease, less than 12 months. Is that what you're thinking?
Yes.
I mean, I don't think it's a bad thing if they go longer than 12 months. What's the thinking on that?
That would be regular dwelling.
That'd be regular.
Versus just
So-
seasonal, so there's.
Okay, so seasonal, and so that kind of ensures that we're dealing with workforce housing. Is that the? Okay,
Yeah. So I can come back with the revisions for the next meeting.
all right, Carolyn?
I have a question. Are we gonna require that there is a business occupying the main level before we're gonna allow a dwelling in the lower level?
I think that
Empty storefront.
businesses come and go. Once you allow it, it's built, there will be times when that seasonal rental will be ongoing and the first floor is empty because they need a new.
Yeah,
Storing.
yeah, I agree. I just don't wanna see more storefronts going vacant in our downtown and, people living below, but there's nothing happening above on the street level. Where we need stuff happening.
I understand the concern about the first floor, but it does seem like the two are kind of unrelated.
Yeah.
Like whether that lower floor somebody's staying in it or not, it's not going to influence somebody filling the first floor.
Yeah, I also think about like the seamstress that's on the lower
Right.
level.
Mhm.
We don't wanna push those people out to build housing, cause where would she go? Where would some
Right.
smaller businesses go, where that rent isn't as high as, a sidewalk level rent,
That's a good point.
so. And I also remember we talked about not having the housing on the main level, but if the property butts up to an alley, I feel like you could split the residential to the backside. And then the retail in the front. I feel like we should be addressing that as well.
Wait a minute, so you're saying for first floor?
Well, we kind of did look at that
Yeah, we
some
did.
months ago, and I think we
We tabled that.
ultimately decided not to pursue that
Right,
possibility. I
Yeah.
think it was more than tabling it. I think we sort of decided
So
it
no,
wasn't a practical kind of thing to
Right.
do.
we had a joint planning commission downtown management board meeting on December 13th, and we discussed the first
Yeah.
floor. And decided that at that time, the strong feeling was we want to keep retail because we have a finite.
Or commercial,
amount of-
commercial.
I mean, commercial. Because we have a finite amount of square footage in downtown.
I don't disagree with that concept. They call that the demising wall strategy.
Mhm.
Okay. When I talked to Amy, her biggest need. People are always looking for 12 to 1,500 square feet. They don't need like 3,000.
Yeah,
Her and I, they have talked about it, but. I think we have to approach this incrementally. And to me, the easiest start would be. If somebody has a vacant lower level that can comply with all the codes, it's sitting there vacant, they want to convert it. Let's give it a shot, and I don't want to be as aggressive as Grand Rapids where they allow single family or apartments on the main level and they're down in their commercial corridors. But because I really think that we need to preserve the retail first floor
yeah,
or the commercial first floor in the downtown
Yeah.
area. So my thought is if we're gonna do anything, let's start incrementally with some small steps first.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I just think about the JCPenney's conversion and now that whole ground floor is parking. So that's
Yeah.
kind of frustrating.
There's
Yeah,
commercial use on that as well.
Will there be?
There's a little strip,
Yeah,
but the majority of it is
yeah.
gonna be Albert.
In your examples, you did McLean and Aiken, and I'm sure the back was shorter. I think that's Commerce Way or whatever that alley is. But this would work any place as long as they've met all the building codes. So somebody could go under, I don't know, pick a building in the middle, under, if there was, I don't think there's even a basement under there, but where the pastry shop, what's the name of it, that makes all the really good donuts. If there was a basement under that building, it doesn't have to have like a walkout like you have at those, any place in the downtown area that had a basement that met building code would fall in.
And I think that's gonna be the critical component.
Right, but it's only,
Is meeting all the codes.
right, egress and it's gonna be the big problem.
Yeah.
Somehow it requires to be sprinkled. I mean, if you have bedrooms in a location where there's no windows,
Yeah,
you've got to have a sprinkled building, fire protective
Yeah,
sprinkler system.
So change the title, add the title to the chart, add definitions for co-living and seasonal rental as part of the ordinance.
Cynthia.
yes. Who's got the, I will, when we're done, I will.
So one of the things that caught my eye on this is, you know, when it mentions grills in the outdoor area. Is there anything that we can do as part of the planning commission to limit the possibility of a grill being next to the building, starting the building on fire, such as what happened at Little Traverse Woods Apartment about 10-15 years ago? Someone had a grill on their outside and the grill started on fire and took out the whole, you know, a good portion of the building. So I don't know if we can say no grills, or if it just needs to be part of the construction that there's fire suppression or something out there. But I think.
You could push the envelope and put it as a condition that grills are not allowed and.
I actually think because of the smokiness,
Yeah.
that just shouldn't be downtown. Period. I don't think it should be
That'd
allowed.
part of one of the conditions.
I would support not having that allowed at all.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
What about existing second floor apartments that might have a balcony off the back that are maybe grilling sometimes? I mean, I think I've seen that in.
It seems like a terrible
Places.
idea. What does fire code say?
I don't think it would affect that, you know, trying to.
But if you've got a grill or you've got a roof overhead, which, but in the balcony, there's probably something overhead on that balcony. Doesn't seem like that would be
Well,
safe.
Not necessarily, but.
Albert?
Hearing all this, when we look at the potential motions that John gave us, I would be more comfortable with number 2, because we're talking about a lot of revisions before we do a planning. So number 2 says, revise the proposed ordinance and reconsider the ordinance at the next meeting. I'd like to see the whole ordinance before we schedule a public hearing.
That's
That's
fine.
kind of where I'm at this point. I'm not trying to stop discussion, I just thought that's where I'm at.
Yeah. Carolyn?
I'm just thinking from memory, but I feel like a lot of the businesses that butt up to alleys, all of their trash and recycling bins are in the alley, so I don't know how we can say like you can't have your refuse out. Like, where else are they gonna put it? It's always out there, so I don't know if that's a good piece to have in there or not.
Well, it's always out there, but it would be within what's already being done as opposed to creating some additional location, I guess is how I interpreted it.
And that's why I said the responsibility of the property owner.
Okay, when I read it, I feel like they have to take it somewhere themselves and not put it to the curb or, I don't know, it just reads.
There has been efforts and discussions about having kind of collective waste disposal facilities to get rid of that problem where everybody's got cans out. I think that I don't know if that's gonna be part of the Seville lot or not. I know that was a discussion when they were doing the design. Was try to,
Well, there was an effort some years back to consolidate those sorts of things, and I think some of that did happen, like behind McLean and Aiken in that alley. I think they did create a more central
centralized facility.
facility, but it was difficult to do in all locations.
Well, in accordance with a special use, the condition use. Wouldn't any plan come back to us anyway?
Yeah, well,
Or would you?
you'd have to see.
So we
You
can
would
take
see
a
the
look
site plan.
on a case by case basis.
Yeah.
And see if it
Yeah.
meets muster.
So if this were to go to a public hearing, would all of the downtown businesses get a notice?
No, it would be,
Ordinance change.
it's an ordinance change. It's published in the paper. We've been working with Amy. Amy had a chance to review it.
Yeah,
I'll let her know about it. She can get the word out to the members downtown. I think she was going to talk to some of them about it anyway. But
great.
yeah, we'll get the word out that way. Like I said, I really think the major hurdle with this is meeting all of the codes. I mean, that's the kicker. Yeah.
So as you've written this, no, the item number 4, the type of residential units allowed. I would think we'd want to stick to co-living units or seasonal housing. I don't think we want traditional apartments. I definitely don't want short-term rentals.
Correct.
Okay, so you're gonna delete those things?
I don't have short-term rentals on my list.
It's the background. I guess maybe, you haven't actually written it yet. You just threw this stuff out as a option.
Number 4, which is.
Oh, yeah. Those were options.
Right,
But when we did the table, I don't have STRs in it.
right. So is everyone in agreement that it would be limited to co-living
Yeah, yeah.
and seasonal?
Yeah.
And would the co-living be seasonal?
It could well be, because I think one of the concepts, one of the discussion items was the person that's looking at this building was thinking about that would be co-living for his staff.
Mm-hmm.
So it could be seasonal employees. So, but
But
I don't know.
if you listed it, are seasonal rentals they're considered different than co-living?
Yeah, co-living could be year round.
Right, but in terms of setup, would you make a distinction?
Yes, because co-living would be the definition. Co-living is what you described,
Right,
is that you have separate bedrooms, but you have a central kitchen and
so a seasonal rental would be considered what? Just a traditional apartment?
a traditional apartment that's rented 3 or 6 months out of the year.
Okay, so we need definitions for those.
I'll put the definitions together.
And Albert pointed out on the,
I got it.
right, okay,
Yeah.
okay, very good.
Just one more question based on that whole thing. Let's take Dave Foods. That's a year-round business. He's short on people. He has somebody that works for him. He wants to build an apartment for him in the basement. Great thing for me, because he has employees in town and housing is a big issue. That person can only rent seasonally? So I that's my question is I heard you're seasonal, but I don't have a problem with it being any kind of employee housing.
No,
Because or if somebody had a chef that they wanted to house in the basement, but when I hear seasonal, it's like, okay, that's just summer, or that's the ski season, do they have to find other living in between? So I want to make sure that we capture.
oh yeah, because a regular apartment would be
Single family.
single family.
Okay, I just want to make sure that it's not, because I heard only seasonal
No,
at one comment, okay.
Yeah, that's my concern too, is that whole seasonality of it. Because employment hopefully is year round. I would also be afraid that some people may try to maximize their investment by turning this into rental. For people that are coming up or family members that are coming up for the season. Instead of for employees. So I really think the focus
Well,
would be
you know,
for
the-
employee housing.
Yeah, and that's a good point. I think The seasonal rental is a carryover from the existing code. And we don't have a definition for it. I'm certainly okay if planning commission wants to delete it. Because the seasonal rental may have been in there. Maybe a carryover from the code before there was such a thing called short-term rental. I don't know the history of it.
Sometimes seasonal rental is the perfect kind of thing for summer employees that are just here short term for, you know, looking for a summer job.
But then they could also live in a co-living space,
Yeah,
you know.
true.
Or they could live in the single family, as long as it's longer than.
So again, I think.
Do you want to say that again?
Or they could, they could be there as a single family as long as it's longer than 90 days.
That's where I was going with this. You don't need to define seasonal. It's just anything that falls outside of the short-term rental window. Then it's good.
Yeah,
You don't need any definition beyond that.
I'm happy to delete it.
Seasonal and go with co-living?
Yeah,
And single family.
I'm single family.
So you'd call it single.
We already have single family.
Well, but what's wrong with just leaving it as it is with seasonal rental as a listed possibility, just to let people know? I mean,
If I may, I don't think this is one restricts the other. So as long as it all ends, what I had heard at one point is you had to do seasonal in the discussion here. So if you can, the best answer to an oral question often is yes. Like my wife, we had 2 boys and one a girl, and she got asked all the time, "Do you want a boy or a girl?" And she just started answering yes. And so same thing, can we have seasonal? Yes. Can we have residential? Yes. I mean, unless there's some reason outside of the, outside of short-term rental, that's the only one I'm concerned about.
I think the goal in doing this is to get in housing for workers.
Yeah.
The emphasis is workforce.
And I think we're confusing housing type with market lease. Because you can have a single family and lease it for 3 months. You could have co-living and use it for your employees that are working for 4 months. So then you have to question, what does really seasonal rental mean?
Right.
Mhm.
Okay, so we're kind of,
Well, okay, so maybe what you do for this is, since we don't want short-term rental allowed, that whatever we call this, it's for greater than 3 months.
yeah, I mean,
or it could be a standard for review in number 5, E could be no short-term rentals allowed.
Does the short-term rental ordinance already prohibit short-term rentals from lower levels of? So, I mean, that's already defined,
Just to be an upper level.
right? So it doesn't need to even be, it's already in the ordinance.
Excuse me, I just had a couple of concerns that I wanted to voice.
Yeah.
So I see very few spaces where this would be conducive for everyday life. I don't want to prohibit any other spaces where this could happen, but for example, that Jimmy John's building that is now condemned, that could be all seasonal, what have you, living on the lower portion. Most of these buildings, they're huge tax recaptures, so owners can depreciate the building based on how much of it is occupied versus not. And it seems like this might be an incentive to make some of it livable space while keeping the storefront non-occupiable, so they don't have to pour any more money into the building. I know this is a kind of a pitch in the dark, but you see where I'm going with it at all? No? Okay, so you think that's an
The
important
ability
of
to
it.
gain income from the housing would negate their
Liability.
and also their concern to try to get the commercial space is filled because they got some money coming in.
Exactly.
And they can still get a tax recapture. And we still have a vacant downtown. And it would furthermore push businesses out of that ancillary storage space while filling them with occupiable tenants when half of our downtown has usable space that's not being utilized. So the entire time that I was reading through this, it was a no for me. So you guys weighed everything very carefully and I respect your decisions, but it's still a no.
What's still a no?
I don't believe that's ordinance change.
Okay, give me your reasons.
I just felt like it's listed.
Okay, well, all right.
You wanna,
Want to read captured?
Yeah,
Because of the way the tax structure is based for owners of these buildings,
mhm.
they could occupy a small portion of the building with livable space and be allowed to leave the rest of the building unoccupied and not well maintained and be in.
Oh,
And
okay,
being-
now I get, now I somehow missed something from what you said, all right,
and-
makes sense.
Tax law.
And take the tax law, got it, so it would encourage empty buildings not being kept up.
Potentially.
But I'd like to continue this conversation tomorrow in our zoning review. Because we are working on language with regard to abandonment. And there may be ways to address the rest of the building being effectively abandoned. Even in the downtown district.
Well, there's already, the city already has on code. The International Property Maintenance Code, and that's the code that would be used if people did not maintain their buildings. Is the International Property Maintenance Code. So the city already has that tool in the toolbox.
It goes beyond just the.
To be able to employ it though.
Pardon me?
I say it seems like it's a pretty high threshold to employ it, given some of the building maintenance from our one special building owner downtown. You know, who has all the vacant buildings downtown and doesn't much maintain them.
So Charlie, do you want to finish?
No,
It's not well thought out. I need to take a closer look at our pending language.
Okay. So Albert,
I think I'd just like to make a motion that the proposed ordinance be revised and be reconsidered either at the next planning commission meeting or the one after, till we get enough information. I don't have anything I can vote on now.
mhm.
I mean, Max's point is very excellent. I had a Western Michigan University professor, that was his side business, doing commercial property for wealthy people, so they could depreciate it. So I understand that concern 100%, Max, and I'm glad you brought it up. So I think we should still consider this, but let's get John, let's have John put in everything heard so far. And then look at it, and if you need more than one meeting, John, to get all the information.
It's fine.
In the upcoming planning commission meeting, I'd like to go ahead and make that motion.
Okay,
I second.
okay, Albert made the motion, Charlie seconded, and Ted,
Questions?
would you like to make a comment?
Thank you. I just had a few comments as I looked at this. And I think there's some good reasons to do it and some concerns. What kind of struck me was just the process. I was like, a process. A property owner wanted to do something. City staff got together and made an ordinance, and here it is. It seemed kind of quick. I always like to see pros and cons because this was previously discussed. And the pros were the housing element for sure. The cons previously stated were mostly about concern about giving up retail space, which people didn't feel would be easily returned back, or it would cost money to turn back. Max brought up some other cons today, which I had never heard before, which is pretty interesting take on it. Yeah, I was just kind of, I always like to see a presentation of what is some of the pros and cons It's interesting, in the presentation, it said several businesses utilize lower levels for operations. And those were examples of retail use in these lower levels. So it almost argued that these lower levels are valuable for retail. So I did have that comment. The other thing that was obviously lacking that I didn't hear tonight was a property owner wanted to do something. The downtown manager was involved in the meeting and got some ideas together, and that's all good, except how about DMB input? What do they think? So John made some mention that potentially she was going to talk to some of them. I mean, that's what they're there for. Would be really useful.
That was Amy's role, I would guess.
Right, but she didn't say that. You have no input from the DMB formally. So you might have assumed because she was speaking and brought this issue forward, but I would, if I was you and I were me, I would want to see what the DMB actually said, because we've had situations before. You just assume, and then like any board or commission, when I was mayor on anything, it's like, I always say, who cares what I think? It's always interesting to what extent, I've asked the DMB before, do the actual members, a small group, do they ever survey or talk to their other constituents, the broader downtown? So those are some of my issues. I did strike me discussion about, there's probably language against short-term rentals currently, which you probably wouldn't want. Other than that, I think discussions of seasonal employees, you're not going to be able to enforce that. It's not even worth talking about. It's ridiculous. The employee thing is always impossible. Sure, someone's an employee and then they're not in 2 weeks, and then so we have to kick them out, or what are the rules? It's not worth talking about. It's either going to be, you know, single family, whatever kind of a rental that's not short term, and unless you're going to get an incredibly complex and system to monitor this, it's probably not worth talking about. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Ted. Oh, any other public? Okay, I'll bring it back to the commission. So
One other comment. We have a number of buildings in the downtown district that have unoccupied but livable, presumably livable space in the upper levels. I don't know which property we're talking about, but wouldn't it be preferable to develop the upper level living space before using a lower level alternative?
okay, so
Well, the marketplace kind of
Dictates that
dictates that.
as well as the property.
And there are some single-story buildings that have empty lower levels now. I don't know.
No, I agree with that. I'm talking about the empty upper level.
Yeah, ideally.
If they're not willing to put livable space up there, should they be allowed to convert their lower levels?
I would defer to Rick and Carolyn on this, but my limited knowledge of the building code would tell me they'd have a far better time putting an apartment on the second and third floor than they would putting it in the basement. So as a property owner, why would I invest the added money on trying to retrofit a lower level when I could spend less money on retrofitting an upper level? So that's, to me, that's.
It would make sense.
Yeah.
But some of these landlords seem to.
Some landlords downtown seem to be quite stubborn about.
I guess I'll just ask this as a philosophical question. Do we really care?
We care that there is available living space that's not being utilized. Yes.
Do we care how a person wants to utilize their building? The first floor, I get it, it's retail. But if I owned a property downtown, why should I be restricted to think about what I could do on my second and third floor or my lower level?
no matter where they put it, where they want to put their money, it's a benefit
It's a benefit.
to the city, so, for housing.
You know,
Right, do we actually need to do that as a vote, or that's
Yes,
just?
there was a motion.
You need a voter.
So all people who support the fact of postponing and having it come back in a month or two? Okay, I think anybody opposed? All right, so. We're all in agreement. Okay. All right, moving on. The annual report. So, John?
Well, and I think it's required by statute to tell the community and the city council what you did in 2024 and what you plan on doing in 2025. And I think it's kind of obvious that in 2025, our key goals are going to be the zoning code and the sign ordinance. And I'm kind of setting an internal goal myself, even though it could be unrealistic, trying to get the zoning code in a position where we can get it wrapped up and adopted by the end of the year, or at least in January of 26. We also need, one of the things I evaluated reviewing this is that we need to get more planning commissioners engaged in Con Ed and continuing education. So I'm going to make it a point to start routing to the PC opportunities for continuing education, either in person or remote. Okay.
Yeah, it looks like Cynthia was the only one that.
She's the overachiever.
Well, what I wanted to point out is in section 2-18, training. Appointed members of the planning commission shall attend educational programs designed for training members of Michigan planning commissions if the adopted city of Petoskey budgets for it. So I want to get a budget in. So nothing in this paragraph shall prevent a member who has not had training from finishing his or her term of office unless the member resigns or is removed. The member shall be ineligible for reappointment at the conclusion of the term of office if they did not attend training. The planning commission shall include in its bylaws what training programs qualify to meet this. So I went on to the MSU one, which is where I have my master citizen planner certification. And they have core courses, there are 10 of them. Their webinars, they take about an hour. And right now they have a special where you can get signed up for $199 and it's going up to $349. I don't know what any of that means, but I'm hoping, Lisa, you could look into what that means. Is it $199 per person?
I'm sure it is.
I would think so, but in this planning commission rules and guidelines, they don't state how many credits, but I think we ought to have a credit goal for each year per person.
I've got one planning commission that in their bylaws requires 6.
Well, that's what
per year.
That's what I do. I do 6.
Yeah.
But I know that we're spending a lot of time on zoning. Some of us are in many, many meetings. But I still think we have got to get back on track. It all fell apart during COVID. And we got to get back on track. And these are the core classes: Introduction to Planning, Planning Official Ethics 101. What is a comprehensive plan? These are all things that are, even though some of you are a little experienced, it's really good to get that basic education because there's a lot you don't know. And it's better to have something that's planned like
Well,
this.
MSU is one, but the planning association also offers
MA.
training, which I would assume would also qualify. Attending Housing North, does that qualify as well?
Sure.
Here's where I disagree with you.
Oh, yeah. These educational programs are,
I think that
we need some parameters.
commissioners need to take these core courses should be required. If you want to go and do a workshop, great. But the core courses, in order to renew your 3-year term, you've got to get these under your belt. Doesn't mean you have to do 10 in a year,
So
but
are you saying that since I did them the first 3 years, I should redo them for the next 3 years? The same core courses?
well, once you get through these core courses, this is my feeling, and you can correct me, but these are important. And they're gonna give you.
I understand, having graduated through some of it, so.
So you have already had them, you graduated from it, eventually you can move on to do what I do, which is, get these other type of courses.
Yes, I understand. So
So what I'm saying is
we're
this
just making it
year,
more complicated to keep track of, that's all.
well, I don't think this is hard. And I think these core classes, people need to
I
attend.
don't disagree with that.
So you're thinking 6, I don't know, I think given the year and the amount of meetings we're gonna have, maybe it's 4.
Yeah, 4 would be great. If you took a year,
It means probably approximately 4 hours. As far as I know, these are all webinars, which means you do it on your own time. And
I thought sitting at John's knee would be sufficient, but.
well, I know Harbor Springs is thinking about, they have got new PC members.
mhm,
They're talking about the possibility of sponsoring an MAP class up here on the essentials of zoning and planning, which would be a core course.
Which we've done in the past here as well.
So, and then I told them if they do that, I said, there's PC members in Petoskey that would probably do it. And then I talked to Tammy over at the county and she would get the word out to some of the other PC members. We probably could end up with a class of 20, easy, I think, with everybody. That's kind of what we've been talking about because everybody needs continuing education. And there's so many new planning commissioners that the feeling amongst the professionals was we need to have
mhm.
essential class of zoning and planning and master planning would be the core.
Yeah, I'm fully supportive of that. I will add that I do have some concern for those of us that are active in committee meetings in terms of the burden of time.
I think once you go through the core, then when you go to Housing North and you learn about brownfields and different housing programs, that's Con Ed.
I haven't, since we've had these special committees, I haven't done that either.
Yeah, and I think Cynthia's point is well taken, is that because a lot of people are meeting more regularly, we can lower the amount of CEUs during this time period, but we should at least get some of the basics done.
Well, anyway, I'm really in favor of this program, which I will pass on to you. Because I think it addresses it all and so you leave no stone uncovered. Sometimes with those workshops, it's not always, you don't get all the same information and things can get dropped out. So this one is pretty concrete. We're all gonna hear the same thing.
We do have a budget for training.
We
I
do.
don't know what the number is, but.
Right, well,
Off the top of my head.
but if we can get the deal, whatever that
Frank told
means.
me it was $30,000.
I know, it's really the whole city. If that $199 deal is appropriate, that's way better than paying $350 later. So,
Cynthia, I'm in total favor of this, but I think if it's gonna be a requirement, the funding definitely needs to be there.
oh, yeah,
So.
exactly, that's why,
They go hand in hand.
right, that's why I want it, because then we request that in this report.
Yeah.
We request it officially, request the city council set aside that in a budget, however it works.
The only other things I wanted to point out was priorities for the new zoning code and the sign code. We really need to take a look at that. The other part was obviously planning commission training. And then I'm gonna talk to the manager about the next fiscal year of tossing in some additional money to take a look at a sub area plan for the Washington, Standish and the Clarion area because of all the redevelopment that's happening there. There's other opportunities for redevelopment, but I think planning commission kind of needs to take the microscope out, really take a look at that neighborhood in terms of some opportunities. The only other thing that we did include is we finally were able to figure out and map the historic districts and the sites in the community, which I think kind of goes hand in hand with our housing quality that we've done. And then also when we get further into the zoning code in terms of the historic neighborhood provisions that are in the code in terms of we have to know where those are at. So we utilized information from the state and the federal government and put the boundaries together for you. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. Planning Commission. Oh, Rick?
John, on this historic district, like the East Mitchell Street Historic District, this boundary doesn't, I pulled out my ordinance or my nomination form. And this boundary doesn't exactly match that, so I don't know if you want to get together and refine this a little bit.
We pulled info. If you got something else, I'm happy to take.
Well, yeah, I have the original map. I don't know if there was some subsequent change made to that original map from the mid 1980s.
Okay.
Or 84, 83, somewhere in there is when this was originally established. So, yeah, we can look at
Yeah,
that.
if you can bring it to the meeting, Mark, that'd
Okay.
be great.
All right. Sounds
And
good.
then we'll get a copy made here.
All right, any other questions, for Albert?
Just on the, I guess the second page, you have a page with all the tables and who's attended, and then on the top of the next page, it says Master Plan Action Program 2024. And you have 3 actionable items there. Just want to make sure we're on the same page. Everybody know what I'm talking about? Actionable item, the third one down about reviewing the zoning ordinance. I think it's important that we put in there that we're rewriting the ordinance, not just reorganizing for it. I think unless, John, there's a reason that you don't want to do that because it's going to tie you in, that's fine.
No, that's fine. I can put reorganize and reorganize the format.
But we're doing a complete rewrite, which is important, I think, to have that out in the report.
I had a question on the cover page. It says 2024 through 2025. Should that really just be 2024? It's the annual report for 2024, or is it extend beyond the
Well, it's
calendar year?
supposed to be 2024 is what we did in 2024. 2025 is what we're gonna do.
Oh, I see. Yeah, because that's included here at the
That's
end.
included. at the-
I see.
Yeah.
I get it. now.
So also there's just a typo, it's 2023. And where did you?
All right, what page are you on?
It's under the purpose,
Okay, so page 1.
membership and attendance.
Oh,
Oh, yeah. So the very first one. The plan, January or 2023, January to
Got it.
June.
yep. I'll correct this before it goes into the city council for their review. But
Good catch, Bob.
I would appreciate a motion to accept as revised and recommend adoption.
Okay,
Or it's information only to the city
moved.
commission.
Second.
so Charlie made the motion and who made the second? All right, all in favor of approving the?
Aye.
Aye. All hands are raised, so we have approved it. All right. Now. Moving on to new business number, well, actually, I don't, this was. New business, zoning ordinance, general discussion topics for duplexes, triplexes, and quadplexes. If hopefully you grabbed your paperwork from the previous.
I've got a slideshow.
Oh, you do? Okay.
And as Lisa brings it up. What we do the slideshow. Kind of cover it up. Why did you get rid of the cool bar? Yeah, there you go. You can hit the icon down at the bottom too if you want. Oop, hit that back. You go down to the There's a little thing down at the bottom, there's like a little screen. Okay, there you go.
That's a second house.
I can just hit the down key.
Yeah.
Right, we can have a little bit of discussion. This is primarily educational. We're getting. At the next PC meeting, I've got a chart that shows the progress of where we're at in the zoning code. We're starting to get close enough that within the next month or two to start talking about the districts and the uses. And so I just wanted to kind of go through, this is more educational than anything else. I'm not advancing any ideas. I'm not promoting anything. I just want to make sure that we have enough educational background when we get into these conversations. We know what we're all talking about. How does this go down? How can I? How do you do it?
On the screen. This is the problem.
Right.
There we go.
Okay, I have to scroll. When we had the joint meeting with the city council in April 2024, I went through these 18 different components, discussion items. In terms of things like character zones, which we talked about, lot width, rethinking density, bicycle parking, non-conforming uses, front yards. These are the discussion items. And some of these we've talked about at the zoning committee level as part of like general conditions and ideas that we've been mulling around at that level. We talked about in the April meeting about the possibility of collapsing down our zoning districts. We have 20 of them. So I want to keep that fresh in your memory. And then we talked about the idea of character districts. And as a prelude to that, the planning commission went out last summer. You walk the neighborhoods. We talked about character. Planning commission started coming up with your own ideas relative to seeing what the similarities were and some of the differences depending on where you were at within the city. So I want to talk about that. And then there's the idea of the missing middle, that in the United States, the majority of our housing stock is either in single family housing or in apartments. And there's very little in the middle. In the middle is duplexes, triplexes, quads, courtyards, medium high rises. So a lot of the middle housing in a lot of communities is absolutely missing. So that's what they refer to the missing middle. And this is kind of a refresher. I wanted to point out that since 1790, when they started doing the initial census, the number of people in a household has significantly declined to where now in today's world, we're at very low levels of the number of people per household. In fact, I have another slide in here. The city of Petoskey is even currently lower than the 2.58, which was identified in 2018. There was a presentation a couple of weeks ago at the college from Networks or from Housing North relative to housing needs in Emmett County. And this was a slide that they showed. And it really gets to the point that in today's world, about 65% of the households are either single, living alone, or two people. And then the balance of the households are either two adults and a child, or maybe there's 4% of the households nationally that are co-living in terms of roommates. Professionally, they may know each other, they may be friends, or people can't afford a 2-bedroom by themselves, so they hook up with a friend and they co-live together. In the city of Petoskey, currently, based on the 2023 American Community Survey, the household size in the city right now is 2.17. So we are definitely getting into that yellow area where we have fewer people that are living in the housing stock. Now, the reason why that's important is that traditionally, and this is the bar on the left is the distribution of people by the definite need in today's world. So 28% of the housing should be allocated to single people, 25 to two people, 20% to three or more. But however, okay, that's how it should be distributed. But however, 72% of American households are primarily single family. So our housing stock is not mirroring what's happening demographically and what those needs are. So that's kind of the situation that's going on. And Petoskey is getting to that point with a household number of 2.17. Currently, this is what's going on in the city relative to the census. We have about 2,500, almost 2,600 households in the city. We have the average household size is 2.17 people per household. 44% of the households are family households. 55.7 are non-family households, which include individuals either living alone or with non-relatives. So the household composition in the community is starting to mirror what the demand on the left-hand column is. All right. The problem with that is that we have more people that are living either as single household or two-person households, and they're taking up the same housing stock that 20 years ago we had way more people living in. And part of the housing crunch is we don't have enough housing for the people that are seeking the one and the two-person households. So we have less people, we had more people living in less housing 40 years ago, and today we have less people living in the same number or even more housing, but we still have a housing crunch. So that's part of what's going on nationally, statewide, and here in the city. So that's why there's still a need for housing. What I want you to start thinking about, these are examples in the city of duplexes. Okay, we don't think that we have them, we do have them. This is over on the corner of Division and Bay Street. This is a well-known historic duplex in the community over on Division. These are newer duplexes on the far north side of town. South side. Pardon me? South side. South side. Yeah. So we have different styles of duplexes that have already popped up. Here's some examples. I just pulled some off the internet from a company that provides, examples. This is examples of current modern duplex living, smaller units. Here's another example. If my mouse works. Stopped working, Lisa.
Can you do the arrows do you have the arrow keys?
Just hit it.
Yeah. Or page up, page down?
That didn't work either. Well, here it went.
Whoa.
Now you're just going down.
Oh,
So here's another example of a duplex. We tend to think of duplexes as large buildings. These are, these type of units are like 1,100, 1,000 square feet. They could go on a traditional city lot. Here's
so each one is 1,000, 1,100?
Yeah. Here's an example of a triplex that's coming on the screen. A little bit more modern style. Again, just to give you some visuals of what these look like. Here's another example of a triplex. What some communities are doing in terms of duplexes and triplexes in the code, they're putting in standards to help manage what the architectural components are. That, you have to have a front door, you can have a side door. They're getting to the point where maybe you have one door where you go into the unit, and once you're inside, then you have a foyer that you can go to the separate unit. So they're trying to, from a design point of view, get rid of the 2 and 3 doors and make them 1 and 2 doors to try to blend them in more with the architectural style of the community. This graphic, which I had at the joint session, is the concept of of trying to integrate different types of housing styles within your current traditional framework of your neighborhood. So instead of having an area that is zoned all two family, you would allow duplexes in a single family neighborhood based on certain conditions that they're allowed in, or triplexes. So they kind of fit in with the fabric of the overall community in terms of their design and their function. Another technique that some cities are looking at to increase housing is to allow the traditional lot, if you have enough frontage, to be divided to accommodate smaller units that are single family. So instead of having a building that's got 2 units within one structure, you have a lot that's large enough that can be divided into 2 smaller lots. For example, 35 feet wide, instead of a 70-foot lot, you have 2 35-foot lots with 2 smaller units in order to provide some infill housing. And this is kind of an example of how you rethink density, is that back in 1950, before we got inundated with vehicular traffic and cars, we actually had more units per acre within a traditional block than what we currently have today, because we've had to accommodate blocks that have obviously a lot more parking. So by rethinking density, rethinking parking requirements, we're able to kind of restructure how our residential neighborhoods can function. You saw the example tonight with the childcare. Lisa and I have this conversation all the time. I tell Lisa, tell me where, and she doesn't know, because I don't know where these parking requirements came from. I have no idea where the parking requirements for a child care center came from. They don't come from a state statute. There's not a federal statute. Someone somewhere determined that for a child care center, you need 1 per instructor, you need 1 per 5 kids. Then when you think about it, the kids don't drive. You know what I mean? So like he was saying is, in the morning, like a school, you need to have the drop off, and then in the night, you need to have the pickup. But based on the way our ordinance is constructed, we have to have like 23 parking spaces. It's kind of nuts. But this is the situation that's happened even in our residential districts. So I want you to kind of think about that. This is a classic example that I use a lot when I talk to other planning commissions. This is what I refer to as invisible density. Okay, someone takes a look at that house and they look at it, and then they may be able to figure out it's got an ADU over the garage. But they look at it, and when I tell them that that is on a 7,000 square foot lot, and if you do the computation, the calculation, that's actually 12 units per acre. Okay, people would look at that and say, no, that's not dense. But when you do it mathematically, 2 units on 7,000 square feet comes out to over 12 units an acre. And that's invisible density. People have a very strange perception of density. This is another example. These are the condos down the block at Water Street. Now, people will look at this and say, yeah, that's a dense development. And relatively it is. You got 16 units on a half an acre. That's 32 units an acre. Because of its design, people could say that that's got higher density. But when you look at it this way, people don't look at that and say that's a dense development, but that's 12 units an acre. So there are some misconceptions about density that I want you to be aware of when you talk with your residents, with your fellow residents. Density always equals overcrowding. People right away think you're talking density, you're overcrowding. Not the case. I just showed you. People wouldn't think that that house with an ADU is overcrowding. Okay, it's a misconception. There's a misconception that higher density lowers property values. Actually, it's the reverse. The Urban Land Institute has done a number of studies and found that when done appropriately, density actually increases property values. We did and one of these days I'll do it for the city because it's very telling. when we were working on the master plan in the city of Novi, the city of Novi has an extremely large commercial core at the intersection of Novi Road and I-96. They have 12 Oaks Mall, which is probably one of the largest and at the time, one of the premier malls in Michigan, along with several other rather large retail complexes. Planning Commission thought that's where the high value was in property values. When we did a 3D model that showed the value per acre that they were generating in the community, the highest areas that generated were areas that had higher density single family and those that had higher density apartments. Per acre, those were the ones generating the greatest property tax value per acre, not the retail centers that people thought. In fact, they were some of the lowest, primarily because they have to rely on such large parking areas that generate no taxable value at all. So there is a misconception that density lowers property values. Density leads to traffic congestion. No, it doesn't. In many communities, a great example currently is in downtown Detroit at Midtown, where they built thousands of apartments and condominiums over the last 10 years. There's no traffic congestion, vehicular. There's walkability. There's a lot of pedestrians that are on the street now. And that's caused a whole revolution or renaissance in bars, restaurants, entertainment venues in that area of downtown Detroit. Okay, so density doesn't necessarily lead to traffic congestion, but it does improve pedestrian congestion on the street. Higher density doesn't mean high-rise buildings. I showed you an example, 12 units an acre, a 2-story home on 7,000 square feet with an ADU. That's dense, according to a lot of people, but it's not a high-rise building. Doesn't contribute to crime rates. In fact, they found that in areas that have a lot of people, actually the crime rates have gone down because there's more people on the street. There's more people walking, riding their bikes. There's more eyes on the street. There's less crime. It's not environmentally harmful in any way. In fact, when we consolidate our development in cores like the city of Petoskey, rather than sprawl, which is occurring in Emmett County, actually it's the sprawl that's environmentally harmful because it means we have to pave more roads and we have more traffic. Okay, so some of this is just counterintuitive that I want to bring to your attention. The other part is that when we think of density, we think of more buildings. That's not necessarily the case. You can have a building that's 3,500 square feet, 2,500 square feet, and divide it into 2 or 3 and have 2 or 3 dwelling units in the same size of structure that you would have on a single family lot. It's just on how the property is managed and divided internally within the structure where you don't see the density. The building is the same. It's the number of units within the building can be increased to provide housing units for the community. Examples that you've seen that have already been looked at by the PC and are in the land development option is the concept of the cottage courts. And that's one of the things that's new. This is a cottage court example. Again, these don't look like they're very dense developments, but when you put these number of units on an acre, you can probably get upwards of 10 to 12, and 10 to 12 people would go, that's high, that's dense. But when they're done appropriately with good design, this is not a dense development. This is a very attractive development. So I wanted to just use this opportunity to start getting you thinking when we get into these conversations on the types of housing and on density and on lot size. Just want you to start thinking a little bit differently in terms of what's going on within the market, what's going on with trends, and the whole concept of density is not necessarily a bad thing. Okay. Like I said, I'm not here to advocate one way or the other. I'm just here right now to educate, to kind of give you something to think about when we get into the sections, which are going to be Article 2 and Article 3, which I think are going to hit the Planning Commission probably sometime around maybe I'm thinking at the latest, earliest would be June, the latest would be July. So I want to give you a couple of months to think about it. Make sure that you go to the petoskeyzoning.org website. We've got a ton of articles on there. In fact, I've heard from another community that they're using that website as a resource because they came across it and because it's got probably 20 articles in there on different trends going on in terms of planning and zoning. So with that, this was kind of like general discussion. I really don't have any, I'm not seeking any policy changes. I just wanted to use this opportunity to kind of give you an idea of what some of the discussion could be in a couple of months. Okay.
Any questions?
Thank you.
Albert?
John, I really enjoyed hearing that and seeing it. I think the biggest statement you said is when done appropriate, right? And, you know, we have some established neighborhoods. And in those neighborhoods, being careful how it was done, considering things like parking. I know parking is not an issue. I talked to one of the leaders of the community, said, well, I go to Chicago and people, every little spot is taken. Well, Chicago has a whole lot better weather pattern than we do. Chicago doesn't make people park on one side of the street and not the other. And so I could see, we have some large homes in R1 and R2, State Street, Grove Street, that could be easily split up into quadplexes and duplexes. But I think we still need to think about things like parking and getting through the street and things like that. So I think we got to just be careful that we are not an urban city. If you look at what our classification is as a town, we are classified as a remote town. Not disparaging, I think of the city of Petoskey to this whole area is the city. But we are a remote town and people come here because of a remote town. So I think we just have to look at both sides of anything and where we put this. If we redevelop Clarion Avenue in that area and it becomes something that you can do, absolutely we should be doing some of the stuff. What we're doing right now at Maple Block and what we're doing, I agree with those. I just have a hard time, and it's probably my experience in Kalamazoo, which was what is and always will be a college town. And they took what was beautiful housing, and now it's being redone back because they have a medical school there, and it's going to live close to the college, close to the hospital in Western downtown. Those are being redone back into single family houses. But there was what's basically student housing, and there are houses just chopped up and look awful and those kinds of things. As long as the details and that we have out there make it look like some of the things you have there, I don't have a problem with it, but it is going to be, in my mind, the devil's in the details. Yeah. And I know I get down in the weeds a lot, and I apologize to the committee for that, but I think that's what the citizens want to hear too. You know, I mean, when they did Mitchell Street and our detour was State Street, if you all had to go up, obviously go up State Street, but you could go up Michigan, the same thing. People parked along both sides. We had to take turns in the busiest time of day if you followed the detour because of cars parked on each side of the street. You know, if you start increasing density in parking, you say, well, we don't need this many parking spots, and anything like that. I think we got to consider what our town is at the same time. And you know, I also serve on the hospital committee, and we cannot get respiratory therapists, nurses, doctors, physicians, anything else in this town because they don't have any place to live. So I understand both sides of the things, but I am also always going to be watching for how it affects the city overall. And I think we got to look at both sides of any of these. New development areas and things like that I want it to be as dense as we can make it and have good housing for people. I just don't know if you take State Street, Michigan Street, Lake Street, Grove Street, up in my neighborhood on the southwest side of town, there's not a lot of places to redevelop, and housing in Petoskey is today the news review said the median house in M County had $700,000. That's the median house
For new listings.
for new listings, yeah, for new listings, not, you know. And so it's gonna be really hard to also define some of that stuff also. Gonna be a challenge, I just think we just gotta be careful.
Okay. Rick?
I don't think there's a lot of danger that some of our big old houses are gonna get divided up. I think the bigger danger for those houses is that they're being bought out by out of state people that are using them as seasonal summer homes. And so our density is actually going down even more. And, you know, that's the trend in Bayview too. I mean, 30 years ago, Bayview cottages were generally small. And a lot of the Bayview cottages were built specifically to accommodate 2 units. You know, you had a second door on the front porch that went upstairs with a second stairway. And sometimes even the second floors were divided up. And now, over the past 40 years, there's been 300 cottage additions in Bayview. And so they aren't two family anymore. They're not multiple family anymore. They're becoming just bigger, single family places. So that's the danger we have because we live in a visitor oriented community.
Yeah.
And I would just say, I mean, and you guys know this, if we're gonna have a thriving downtown community, we need to change. We can't keep the status quo because it's not working. Our downtown is, it's not thriving. We are losing people. People move here, they can't afford to live in our town, so they live in surrounding communities. So we just have to, you know, be creative and figure out how we can get more people living in our downtown or within the city of Petoskey.
Well, if you take a look at our neighbor across the bay, 68, according to their assessor, 68% of their housing stock is seasonal.
Wow.
Yeah.
68%. And that's why during the winter, most of their downtown, the stores are closed. They don't have enough people to support the retail. And I agree with you.
A higher density.
Yeah.
Is gonna create a more vibrant, thriving city downtown. And that's what, like, we owe that to our community. We owe that to our, you know, business people. To create something that's gonna work for everybody, and like Albert said, do it in a way that makes sense for Petoskey. But we have to change.
Okay.
Okay.
Any public like to speak? Ted?
Thanks. Again, yeah, great presentation, John. Good points. Really high quality construction was shown, and that's, you know, again, what I'd like to see. I just want to talk about briefly, you know, my experience with a house next door, which was bought pre-COVID, around $350,000. The demolition would have been $90,000. I didn't take it down. The 1,700 square foot, relatively nice, small home was going to be $750,000. Again, everyone has to be realistic. And this is my question again, are we, I kind of hate to encourage tear downs in the city of Petoskey. But if you do, and it's high quality construction and we set it up nice, please understand what these units are going to cost and who's going to live there. The cost of these units is going to be, I can tell you, I just gave you some numbers. I bought the house before COVID, so the house would be double now. So, I mean, that project was a several $1 million project to buy that old house, tear it down and make a duplex, a new one like that. A remodel of the existing home was going to be far less than half that. So I'm wondering about the thoughts on, you know, how conversions can happen, maybe that work. Because this whole concept of buying this old house, tearing it down and rebuilding this new thing is going to be an expensive venture.
Ted, I think we've talked about it a little bit at the zoning committee, but the city's got a couple of different things going on, from my perspective. In some areas of town, we need to have a strategy of rental inspection and code compliance, which the city's starting to do. But we need to have a rental inspection program because some of the quality of housing is starting to decline. In other areas of the community, primarily like up in the lake and Mitchell and Arlington and that area. People are concerned about the inappropriate renovation of buildings that may destroy the historic context of the neighborhood. That strategy is one that some people back away from, but in my opinion, before you lose all the character, my thought would be the city really needs to investigate taking a look at creation of a local historic district commission that would be able to manage and monitor what people do on the outside of their houses and control what you're talking about relative to like the inappropriate modification or the demolition of a historic structure, which can have a significant impact on the neighborhood. So from my perspective, we can't address all this in the zoning code, but there's strategies that I think we need to, as a planning commission, we need to take a look at. I mean, the Clarion, Washington Street, Standish Avenue is a great example for redevelopment. Other parts of the community are great examples for preservation. Other areas of the community are in need of rehabilitation. Okay, but it's gotta, we can't just focus on one component. I think we have to focus on concurrent strategies in order, I think where you're getting, Matt, is in order to really encourage the type of housing that we want, we've got to preserve, we have to protect, and we have to rehabilitate, kind of all at the same time.
Are you looking at bringing the rental inspection that we created? Are you looking at pushing that forward again?
The manager and I have had several conversations in that area.
I think that's important.
Yeah.
You know, like you said, people deserve quality living conditions. And without that program, there is no guarantee that happens. And again, we owe it to the people of this community to push that forward.
I agree with that. I'm sorry, I agree with the rental inspection. We have some beautiful properties in areas on the west side from Ingalls all the way to the hospital that have rental properties that if they were required to maintain them a little better, you know, that's what I see that. And I see some of the houses in there that have been chopped up and are not well maintained. And I just, you know, I grew up on Harvey Street and I don't want Harvey Street to look like, I don't want any part of Petoskey actually to look like what we see in those other areas. So I agree with the rental thing. And I thought that part of that neighborhood enterprise zone, there were grants available. I would love to see grants go to landlords, existing landlords, not new ones, to maintain their property just like we're doing for homeowners. And I thought there was some granting available as part of the NEZ area. If there is, I certainly like to look at what can we do to have both a carrot and a stick for our landlords, especially our existing local landlords, because it's hard. I mean, they're trying to keep their housing rates as low as they can. My neighbor across the street owns 7 properties. And at the same time, you can't keep rates down and maintain the property, you know, and you know, affordable housing in Petoskey, I could not afford to live where I am now. My house, I bought for a little over 300,000 in 2019. The house kitty corner of the lot behind me, the young lady that was in the audience bought it 6 months later. She is thinking about moving to Traverse City for family reasons. Her house was listed for about 320. They're talking 650 for a house next to Ted's mother-in-law. I mean, there's some things we have in Petoskey that we are not going to be able to control with zoning. The market is doing it to us. The change in demographics. I have a 29-year-old nephew that's making $120,000 a year sitting at home like this. And he would just as soon sit at home in Petoskey, and he can afford being a single person, a $600,000 house. You know, I mean, and that's, we have that other demographic out there, the huge difference between him and the Alice's out there, the, what is it called, asset limited income, constrained. So, I mean, there's all those factors going into it, and I think I don't think it's an or, I think it's an and put the ands where we can. And put the ors where, you know, we should preserve parts of the city where we can. And encourage, especially where we can redevelop and make better housing. That's what I'd like to see our effort made, because that'll also keep the price down.
The map that was included, you know, in our packet tonight that showed the National Register listed historic districts, all of those houses that are in any of those historic districts that are rental income, those qualify for both a federal and a state rehab tax credit. You can get a 20% rehab credit on your federal income tax, and you can get a 25% rehab credit on your state income tax by rehabbing those houses, anything that's on those listed in those historic districts.
But it has to
So
be
that's an
a
incentive.
rental,
Well, it has to be commercial.
commercial, yeah. Yeah, all right, well, it's getting close to time to shut it down, so any public comment? Ted?
Sorry about this. I have to make a comment on, I wasn't able to do it on 403 Madison Street Child Care Center.
Oh, I'm sorry, Ted.
Just listening to that presentation, it sounds like the applicant wants a fairly expedited review. He gave his reasons, which is fine. I'm concerned that it's going to require some ZBA action. If I'm understanding this, the fence presented was truly a front yard fence, not the corner front yard fences are allowed, but the corner front is described as not the address side. So I believe the fence was showing was on the Madison Street side, which would not be allowed for the corner front yard fence. In addition, he happened to mention that he needed 48 inches. Corner front yard fences are allowed to be 42 inches. They are now allowed to be chain link. If they're living fences, they have to be 3 feet in height. And if they're solid fences, they can only be 50% solid. So for several reasons, I'm questioning not his project and the greatness of it, but if we do have laws and we do have a zoning ordinance and we do have a fence ordinance, and it sounds like he might need a variance possibly from the ZBA. So I was concerned about that, and you can discuss that.
Thank you. That is a good point, but I guess make sure all the Ts are crossed and the Is are dotted when it comes back in terms of that. All right. Say it again. Oh, okay, so. So Allison and
Yes, hi. Good evening, commissioners. This is Allison Patton, 602 East Lake. I participated in the last meeting. I do want to, and I will try to get through my stuff as quickly as I can. I know you've been here a long time. I do want to mention briefly, when we talk about single family homes, do keep in mind that that does not mean that only a nuclear family can live there. I don't know about the rest of you. I was born in 1955. At the time I was young, and all the young people that I know, after we moved out of our parents' homes, we did not live in apartments or condos. We lived together in single family homes. Of course, it meant, we had our own bedrooms, but we shared a kitchen, we shared a bathroom. And it was very economical. And, that's how we were able to save money, pay for tuition, et cetera. So I think it's just important to not equate in our mind single family home as meaning that only a nuclear family can live there. Groups of people can live there. But this is also true. If you take what is a single family home and you turn it into a duplex or a triplex, you will never again have a nuclear family living there because you've separated it out with separate bedrooms and separate entrances, etc. All right, the main thing I wanted to circle back on tonight with you is the process that's being used. You'll recall at the February 19 meeting, I stressed the importance of what you're doing. You're basically involved in making new law. And I indicated that, in my opinion, I thought you should be working from a proper legal red line draft, namely a draft that starts with all the current zoning provisions, then shows strikeouts through all the current provisions that would be deleted, plus using highlighting or bold to show modifications in current provisions, plus using highlighter bold to show proposed brand new language, and then using brackets or some other device to show current provisions that are going to be retained but moved somewhere. That's what a red line means. It is a legal term. It means you are tracking exactly what is going to happen with all the existing language. And you know, and I know, this is not what you've been getting. You have not been getting red line drafts. When I was here the last time, I suggested to the city planner that perhaps he would like to talk to new legal counsel at Foster Swift about the process being used. I noted tonight, nothing has been said by the city planner about that. Did he do that? Who did he speak to? What did they say? But we do know this much since the last meeting, that now for the first time in the summaries of the zoning committee meetings that the city is doing, and I'm referring to the one that was done for March 4, the city is now saying in those summaries that you, the planning commission, are getting red line documents. That is not the case. So where we're at still is that not only is the city failing to correct the problem, but it's now doubling down by using this duplicitous use of the word red line, calling these drafts that you are getting as being red lines when they are not. Because you know, and I know, and everyone knows that is involved in this process, that what you are getting in the drafts, the zoning committee and yourselves as the planning commission, you are only seeing the current language that the city planner has decided should be retained. He is not showing you through strikeouts current language that he is not including in the proposal. And he's also giving you drafts that only show proposed new provisions. You're never seeing in any of these drafts the numerous current provisions that the city planner has decided should be deleted, nor are you seeing current language that the city planner has interstitially modified in some way. I also want you to know that soon after the Feb 19 meeting, I sent an email about this problem to the city manager and to new city legal counsel. It's been almost a month now. They have not had the courtesy to respond to me. And frankly, I am no longer expecting any response now that I've seen how in the new meeting summaries, it's being asserted that you are getting red line drafts. To me, it's pretty clear. The city's position is that they're just going to keep doing what they're doing and now are using what is, in my opinion, a bogus definition of the word red line to make it look like and to create a record, making it look like you're getting red lines when you know you're not. The ball is now in your court. As a taxpayer and citizen, the city has made it clear they're going to ignore me, but the city cannot ignore you. I have witnessed the very thoughtful and careful work that you do. And frankly, I cannot imagine that you want to be approving drafts for council to review and ultimately vote on when you have not received proper red line drafts showing all of the current language that would be deleted or modified. I can also assure you that the flawed process that is being used is not the norm. I have spoken to 3 municipal lawyers who have, as part of their work, done overall code rewrites for other Michigan cities. And all 3 told me that, of course, the proper procedure is you start with a document showing all the current code provisions and what's going to happen with those. I was further advised that Muni Code, with whom the city has an ongoing current contractual relationship, has in-house lawyers that are available to do all of the drafting work for a full code rewrite in proper red line draft form for a fixed dollar fee. Now, that fixed dollar fee varies depending on size of the current code, but it does cover the entire process from start to finish for a fixed dollar fee. So if the city doesn't want to pay Foster Swift on an hourly basis to do this work, the city can retain MuniCode to do that. This, the city already has a relationship with MuniCode. That's why Petoskey's current code provisions can be found on MuniCode. And the city has the money to do that. The city has a healthy general fund balance. The city is comfortable spending over $1 million to improve an ice rink used by a small percentage of the population. So surely the city should be willing to spend the money needed so that these important changes to the zoning law will be done properly. Yes.
Generally, we try to keep the comments less than 5 minutes and we've gone over that. So thank you for calling in and.
All right, I will continue at the next meeting then. Thank you.
All right, updates? Any updates? Okay. So I call this meeting at 8:01 PM adjourned.
You guys.
Yeah.
This is super interesting. This is like a school, like a class for civics, so I just had to go to like a city meeting.
Right.
And I actually have like fun. This is super.
Amazing.
Yeah, well, great.
Be careful, you might be volunteering. So I go to one city, and my dad presented about the, what is it, the.
Childcare.
So he was like, yo, you wanna?
So glad to have you. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for coming. Yeah.
Have a good night.
Good night.
So